Air Canada is defying Trump's economic warfare, showcasing a masterclass in strategic resilience. The former president's tariffs were intended to crush Canadian businesses and force the country into submission.
Social that starting October 1st, we will be imposing a 100% tariff on any branded or patented pharmaceutical product unless the company is building their manufacturing plant in America. Also on October 1st, a 25% tariff on all, quote, heavy big trucks made in other parts of the world. And finally, a 50% tariff on all kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, and associated products, as well as a 30%.
Canada has just unveiled 3 bold new U.S. routes for 2026, a clear sign that Trump's punitive trade policies have backfired spectacularly. To see why this is significant, we have to rewind to March 2025, when Trump launched what many described as an economic assault on America's closest ally. Those tariffs weren't just about trade. They were about power, control, and Trump's unusual obsession with turning Canada into the 51st state.
The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities.
The U.S. president then went on to lambaste the EU for uncontrolled migration, which he says creates problems for the West. And he blasted the role of the UN in funding it. Okay, let's pick up on that with CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon. Joy, Mr. Trump didn't mince words when it came to the EU and migration, so remind us what he said.
This was harsh, Sandy. The U.S. president on the world stage blasting the United Nations for not doing its job, not solving wars and not supporting U.S.-led peace efforts. Donald Trump bragged that he single-handedly solved 7 wars with no help from the UN, not even a phone call. He criticized world leaders right to their faces, telling countries to close their borders and expel foreigners or they will be ruined. Have a listen.
It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war.
So migration, a Palestinian state, he talked about so much, including climate change. Tell us.
Yeah, Sandy, the drill, baby, drill. President said the quiet part out loud after cutting funding for green energy projects and wind power in America. It is still a shock to hear the U.S. president denying the science that the planet is warming. He called those who say so stupid. Here's the president again.
It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong.
But here's what Trump never anticipated. His actions would fundamentally reshape how Canadians view America and how Canadian businesses respond to U.S. aggression. Air Canada's latest announcement comes at a time when cross-border travel has been devastated by Trump's policies. The numbers tell the story of an administration that shot itself in the foot. Canadian exports to the U.S. have dropped about 2% this year, a seemingly small decline that translates into a $5 billion hit, largely driven by tariffs that made Canadian goods more expensive for American importers. Yet it's the travel sector where Trump's failures are most glaring. The U.S. Travel Association once estimated that a 10% drop in Canadian tourism would cost $1 billion in spending and wipe out 14,000 American jobs. The reality has been far worse. Air travel fell 22% year-over-year in June, marking 6 straight months of double-digit declines. Same-day excursions plunged 43% in May, with overnight visits down 34.3%. These aren't just statistics. They represent thousands of lost American jobs and billions in economic damage. All because Trump chose to pick a fight with America's closest ally. The human cost becomes clear in individual stories. Vancouver attorney Lena Yousafzai, who once lived in Maui, cancelled her latest trip after Trump announced 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and repeated his desire to make Canada the 51st state. "Out of loyalty to Canada and our values, we had to cancel," she said, a sentiment echoed by millions who now see America as unworthy of their tourism dollars under Trump's leadership. This is where Air Canada's strategy shines. While Trump alienated Canadian travelers, the airline quietly positioned itself for a different kind of expansion. Its 3 new routes for summer 2026, Toronto to San Antonio, Montreal to Cleveland, and Montreal to Columbus, aren't aimed at Canadian leisure flyers. They're built around something far more strategic: Sixth Freedom traffic. These routes, Air Canada's secret weapon, allow Americans to connect through Canadian hubs to Europe and Asia, often with better options and pricing than U.S. carriers can provide. Air Canada has built a powerful business funneling American passengers through Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver to destinations worldwide. Ironically, Trump's tariffs may have strengthened this model by weakening U.S. carriers' competitiveness. The timing of the announcement is no coincidence. Air Canada plans to grow transborder capacity by 15% in summer 2026, even as Prime Minister Mark Carney declares the old relationship with the U.S. is over after Trump's trade war. Far from a contradiction, this is strategy. Air Canada sees what others miss. Canadian leisure travel to the U.S. has collapsed, but American demand for international connectivity remains strong. Targeting mid-size U.S. cities like San Antonio, Cleveland, and Columbus, markets without dominant hub airlines, demonstrates just how calculated the move is. As EVP Mark Gallardo noted, some business segments remain resilient despite wider slowdowns. Sixth Freedom traffic is one of them. Meanwhile, Canada has adapted by diversifying its economy. Exports to the UK surged 63% since Trump's inauguration, making Britain Canada's second-largest export market outside the EU and displacing China. The result? Canada hasn't just weathered Trump's economic assault, it has reduced its dependence on the U.S., achieving the exact opposite of what Trump intended.
Just the Prime Minister of Canada. People see in him someone with more expertise than almost any other leader, certainly in the Western world, on economic matters writ large. And I think that it's something that works in Canada's favor. And we're seeing that as he visits today Ireland, of course, and later go to London in Great Britain and talk with a bunch of like-minded countries that are going through very much the same thing with the United States, and that's something that Carney said since day one he wants to do, to build new partnerships, and I think this is part of that exercise.
Scott Reed and I were talking about how comfortable Carney seems with other world leaders on the world stage. I want to pick up, though, on your point, because the Conservatives are saying, or will they say, are we really seeing?
The broader economic picture shows the true scale of Trump's miscalculation. His tariffs are hurting Canadians and Americans alike, driving up costs for consumers, threatening thousands of jobs, and undermining North America's global competitiveness. Yet while Canada has adapted with new markets and strategies, it's American businesses, especially in tourism, that have taken the hardest hit. Laura Hunt, CEO of Great Canadian Holidays, said most of her company's U.S. tours are dead in the water after Canadian customers pulled out. It's a fundamental shift in North American tourism patterns with effects that will linger long after the tariffs are repealed. At the same time, Air Canada is expanding long-haul service with new routes to Spain and Italy, while resuming flights to Budapest and Shanghai. This marks a clear pivot away from dependence on the U.S. and toward global markets, a strategy to future-proof against American political instability. The psychological damage goes deeper than economics. Canadian attitudes toward the U.S. have soured. An Ipsos poll in February found 68% of Canadians now think less of their southern neighbor. It's not just about policy differences, it's a fundamental shift in perception. WestJet has already seen bookings shift away from U.S. destinations to Mexico and the Caribbean, sending billions of dollars to competitors who didn't alienate Canadian travelers. The irony couldn't be clearer. Trump's policies have delivered the opposite of what he promised. Instead of boosting U.S. competitiveness, they've weakened American businesses. Instead of forcing Canada into submission, they've pushed Canada to diversify away from U.S. markets. Instead of strengthening leverage, they've exposed America as an unreliable trading partner. Air Canada's expansion is more than business, it's a symbol of resilience. While Trump raged about making Canada the 51st state and slapped on tariffs, Canadian companies quietly adapted, seeking new opportunities and preparing for long-term success. Beginning May 2026, Air Canada will launch 3 seasonal routes, Toronto to San Antonio on the Airbus A220-300, 3 times weekly, plus daily Montreal flights to Cleveland and Columbus on Embraer E175s. These flights aren't just routes, they're lifelines connecting U.S. cities to the world through Canadian hubs, underscoring Canada's growing role as a global aviation bridge. Trump's tariff war has also exposed the deep integration of North American supply chains, something his crude approach ignored. Tariffs disrupt auto production, raise consumer costs, and put American prosperity itself at risk. Attacking Canadian businesses means attacking American workers and consumers too. The larger lesson: economic nationalism is futile in a globalized economy. Trump assumed tariffs would give America leverage, but instead, they sped up exactly what he opposed: the shift of economic activity away from the U.S. toward more stable partners. Canada's response has been steady but firm, urging consumers to buy Canadian instead of American products, supporting domestic industries, and deliberately reducing reliance on the U.S. For Air Canada, the timing is strategic. With the industry recovering from the pandemic, the airline is betting that business fundamentals will outweigh political noise. By targeting unaligned markets like San Antonio, Cleveland, and Columbus, and focusing on Sixth Freedom traffic, the carrier is positioning itself for long-term advantage. The seasonal launch allows flexibility, letting Air Canada test demand and adjust capacity as needed. Looking forward, Air Canada offers a model for Canadian businesses navigating American unpredictability: diversify markets, play to competitive strengths, and stay flexible. The ultimate irony of Trump's trade war is that it has made Canada stronger and more independent, while weakening the U.S. The U.S. tourism sector alone is projected to lose up to $29 billion in 2025, with Canadian travelers driving much of the shortfall. Canadians are choosing Mexico, the Caribbean, and beyond, reshaping regional tourism flows. Air Canada's bold U.S. expansion is more than a business move. It's a declaration that Canadian companies won't be bullied by economic aggression. Trump's tariffs were designed to weaken Canada, but instead, they revealed Canada's adaptability and resolve. The 3 new routes launching in 2026 represent not just recovery, but a strategic repositioning for a future less dependent on the U.S. and more integrated into global markets. Trump's economic warfare has backfired spectacularly. While American businesses lose ground, Canadian companies like Air Canada are seizing the moment, turning U.S. hostility into a catalyst for global growth and long-term strategic strength.